Hello, and welcome to Flourish Thought Leader Spotlight. It's an online forum where we invite exceptional entrepreneurs, policymakers, deal makers to discuss their passions and views on the rapidly transforming business environment. I'm Smita Aggarwal, a senior investment advisor at Flourish, and today I'm thrilled to talk to an outstanding founder from Bangladesh. Bangladesh, as some of you may already know, is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, has the world's second highest Facebook users. With a population of 160 million people, it's the world's eighth most populous country, and it has one of the highest mobile internet users in the world. I think they rank nine in that ranking. In the past, Bangladesh has been known for introducing microfinance to the world and as one of the largest exporters of ready-made garments. Today, with the internet boom and a young population, tech-driven startups are fast emerging with innovative solutions. And we have with us today Afeef Zaman, co-founder and CEO of ShopUp, the fastest growing platform for business owners in Bangladesh. It has over 680,000 merchants as users on their platform, and they have just announced the close of the Series A for $22.5 million, one of the largest issues so far by a Bangladeshi startup. Hello, Afeef.
Thank you, Smita. Thanks a lot for having me here, and thank you for your very kind words. It still feels day zero for us. Hopefully, what we're building is a company that will be here for many, many decades. So it's probably just this first step for us.
Yes, it was only 4 years ago that you started ShopUp with two other co-founders, and it is absolutely amazing to see the rapid evolution of ShopUp. You come from a family of accomplished professionals. You graduated from a premier institution in Bangladesh, and there would have been many career options for you to choose from. What prompted you to become an entrepreneur and start ShopUp?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting question. So ShopUp actually started when plastic started to destroy the potential of my grandfather's village. So my grandfather's village is one of the largest pottery cluster of Bangladesh. There are 5,000 plus potters there. They make clay-made everyday object that was quite popular all over Bangladesh. In fact,
Mhm.
their turnover was almost equal to the size of a publicly listed manufacturer in Bangladesh. But once a large company here launched plastic products, and it was almost instantly available all over Bangladesh to consumers. Plastic products were cheaper, it was colorful, it was durable. It almost immediately ate into the market share of these community, right? So these people who are building pottery products. So at that point, we started thinking that maybe we can build something for these people so that they can have direct access to customers. Like they don't have to go through these layers of agents to actually get to the customer. So we built a very simple business management tool. The idea was they could use that tool to access customers or gain new customers directly. The first few versions didn't work out, but the fourth version started to actually pick up. At that point, we also realized that this problem is not just for any particular community, right? It's basically common for all small businesses across Bangladesh. And we also realized that at that point, these businesses also have a big problem accessing capital from formal financing institutions. And that's primarily because all of their business is basically based on cash. Since we had their data of accessing customers, new or old, we decided to use that to actually leverage and make these people visible to the formal financing institution. So that problem was big enough, it got us hooked, and that's basically how we started ShopUp.
Very interesting. So you decided to use the power of digital social media technology to focus on solving two big problems for small businesses, which is access to market and access to finance. Afif, I remember when I first met you 3 years ago, how excited you were at the reaching the big milestone of 10,000 merchants on your platform. And, the pride with which you shared the example of Bunon, your first loan borrower whose sales grew 3 times after taking the loan from ShopUp. Today, of course, ShopUp is a multi-service platform serving online and offline merchants, helping them with sales generation, order management, sourcing supplies, delivery and payments, working capital credit, and much more. Your growth across all of this has been quite commendable. But it's also a very vast canvas to work on from the narrow focus that you began with. And certainly juggling so much all together would not be easy to execute. Do you see the risk of ShopUp spreading itself too thin?
That's actually one of our earlier learnings we had, like from launching the first product. So focus can sometimes be a double-edged sword. What I mean by that is, like, focus is important when we're going for execution, but when you're thinking about a problem, it's important to look at left or right. So I'll give you one example, right? So if you think about a business management solution for small businesses in a developed world, like something like Shopify, for example, in the ecosystem, you'll have for logistics, DHL and FedEx, for payments, PayPal, Stripe, and for supply chain, maybe Amazon, right? So all these pieces are actually figured out, and there are large scale companies basically solving those problems. So you find one specific gap and really double down there to make a very large company there. So that's why you will see an SMS API company being a $1 billion company in these evolved markets. But when you're working in a more underdeveloped market like Bangladesh, you need to make sure when you're thinking about the merchant and the problem, you look left and right. Right? So these blocks are not solved here. So that's what we learned when we started working very closely with the small businesses, right? If you only solve one or two of these problems, it really doesn't mean that the business will actually grow. So Bangladesh, as you mentioned, is one of the fastest growing countries, right? But if you're a small business, your life is very difficult, right? Your suppliers will cheat you. You can't work with large logistics players. You won't have access to distribution to reach customers all over the country. You are invisible to the formal financing sector. So all these problems are outside your circle of influence, and and these are really important blockers for these SMEs to grow. And we had that mindset to actually solve that. So from that point of view, we started working very closely with our small business merchant partners and try to understand what are the core problems they have. With that mindset, we basically took a full stack approach towards building the commerce platform that we have built today. And we primarily solve three problems. Number one, supply chain. So we currently have the largest catalog of wholesale products for these SMEs to actually procure from. Number two is logistics. So we have built the largest last mile logistics company in the country. And the main goal is to ensure all small business anywhere in Bangladesh can reach any customer anywhere in Bangladesh using our platform. Number three is an embedded financing product to ensure these small businesses are not invisible to the formal financing sector. And these three problems are actually very much connected, right? So solving one helps us solve the other problem. And alongside that, the growth in one also helps us basically grow in the other pillar. So it's almost like a flywheel. So I think that has been a learning that these three problems needs to be solved. Otherwise, we cannot really ensure growth of our small business partner.
I agree that, from all of what you just described, that this approach of being focused on your customer segment and then going broad in terms of the range of services you offer to that customer works well in also building sticky relationships with your merchants and creating a virtuous cycle, as you said, of continuous engagement with them across their different needs. Last time I was in Dhaka, you invited me to join your weekly guild team meeting, and I was amazed with the talent in the room that you had. There were people in the room who were much more experienced than you and with domain expertise across functions. Building a strong leadership team would not have been an easy task, and I'm sure recruiting, motivating your team probably takes up bulk of your time.
Yeah, I mean, so as a young founder, I realized very early on that the kind of vision that we have set out for ourselves, we can't really build it just by ourselves. Like, we don't have that expertise, we don't have that experience. So that's why it was very important for us to make sure we have the right team alongside us, the right leadership team. So that's why we called it a guild team, not a senior management team. The idea is that it's like a group of people who is coming from different domains with vast experience, and we can all leverage from each other. I'll give one specific example. So around last year, around this time, me and my co-founder Atul, we were thinking that the kind of product ambition that we have and the kind of execution capability that we have is not probably matching. So at that point, we started to look for other options, At that point, we were lucky enough to meet a very exciting group of founders from a startup called Vunik. So Sujat and Navneet.
Mhm.
So we started talking to them. We spent time talking about their business that they have built, and then we invited them to Bangladesh. And we told them that, look, Bangladesh is a very exciting opportunity. Whatever we are going to build will be a legacy for the next few decades. So why don't you basically join us? So eventually, Vunik merged with ShopUp. Both Sujat and Navneet are now basically co-founders of ShopUp, and we probably are lucky to have one of the better execution teams on our hand. And the way the company is run now, it has completely transformed. Now, while recruiting these people, one thing I keep in mind is it's very important to have a very large vision, but not only that, it's very important to also articulate that vision in a very specific manner so that these people can relate to that. And once they can see that future, it's very important for you to even go and remove them from that path, right? So that's something that I always try to practice.
That's so true. Being a founder is about having conviction and staying the course on that vision that you have. And it's also about articulating that vision. And one of the core jobs, I'm sure, as a founder is to sell your story and your vision to investors and raise money, or you won't survive. And you have a fantastic mix of investors in your cap table across angel, seed investors, and growth stage investors. Describe the process you went through to secure that.
Well, first of all, again, we are very lucky to have that. But in fact, it's very interesting. We have a very nice anecdote about how we got to Omidyar and you. So I'd probably like to share that. So I remember 2 years back, 2 or 3 years back, me and my co-founder, we were part of this program, and we were in Silicon Valley for 2 weeks, and we were very desperate to raise our financing round at that point. So we went to every random pitch event there, and we just went in and just started pitching there. So there's one called Female Founders Pitching to Female Funders. So my co-founder Sifat, she basically pitched there, and someone from Omidyar was actually there. So after the pitch, we basically went up to her and told her, look, we know that you won't probably invest directly in Bangladesh, but can you at least introduce us to someone in the regional team so that basically they can have a look at us? So after we came back, we reached out to her twice more, and then she introduced us to you. And if I remember correctly, the first time we had a call, the line was dropping like every few minutes. I was running from one room to another one, making sure that basically I can at least talk about the business the way I want. But I had only one thing in my mind, that I need to make sure Smita visits Bangladesh, because I had that conviction that if you visit Bangladesh, you'll definitely see this opportunity here. But that's more from our side. Like, I'm sure you have your side as well. So curious to know how it was from your side.
Well, thank you so much for relating that story and anecdote, Afeef. And I must say, and I must admit, that making an investment in Bangladesh was not our priority at that time. So thank you so much for bringing Bangladesh to our attention. And I'm grateful for your persistence. But then apart from that, I think what really intrigued me, as we went along the conversations with you and understood what you and were doing and what ShopUp was about, was, I think, a couple of things. Number one, what struck me was your passion and your deep understanding of your target customer and the problems that they are facing and how you plan to solve that. I think that was, you were so embedded in understanding the context of your customers. And the second thing that was very intriguing is, you actually had a demonstration of your product market fit. You had actually carried out pilots which demonstrated what impact your product and solution could have on the sales and income of your merchants. I think those two things really stood out to me, in very early on in our interactions with you. So we are, of course, since then, thrilled that we made the decision to back you back then and continue to do so. But and I think it was really your persistence that played off.
Thank you. I think it's also actually aligned with what we have picked up along our journey of raising multiple rounds, right? I would share a few things that we have picked up, and these are not things just by my experience. We got it from other investors, other founders, other advisors as well. What we saw is there are primarily five things that all investors, like give or take, look into. Number one is the founder market fit. It's very important to articulate that why a founder or a set of founders are right for a particular market, because they will have insights that probably others won't have, and that can actually help define the company's success. So that's number one, to making sure that we can articulate that properly. Number two that we have found out is how big the opportunity is. Like quite often, if even after if we have an early market fit and we grow very fast, if the market is shallow, hitting the wall is a very real possibility. So making sure that we are building a company in a market that's large enough is also very important for investors. Number three, what we found out is the thesis, like the clarity in thinking about how to build a company, why a particular group of founders will have a strategy that will work out properly in the market. I think clarity in that thought process is very important for investors as well. Number four is the team. By team, I mean the co-founding team, the broader leadership team, whether we have the right people around us to make sure that we can execute the kind of vision that we are talking about. I think that's the number four. Number five is traction. Now, when I talk about traction, I don't only talk about the number of registered users, because that's a vanity metric and all investors will probably see through that. Now, how we talk about traction gets evolved in different stages of an early stage company. So the first big milestone for a company is to get first group of angel investors. And angel investors will primarily want to know more about the founder idea, how big the opportunity is. They won't probably go much deeper into the traction bit. So once we have that early group of angel investor, the next milestone is to get an institutional investor. At that point, it becomes very important how we talk about our traction. For example, we should not just only talk about our overall registered users, right? So we need to start talking about our active users, both at the daily level, at the monthly level. Then we need to talk about our retention cohorts. So if you are not monetizing, then strong retention cohorts are proxy for future revenue. So it's very important to make sure we are communicating these things. Then we need to make sure that if we are monetizing, how is our unit economics, right? So for example, what's our take rate or margin? And within that margin, what's our contribution margin? Are we losing or making money in every transaction? And then if we are paying to get customer, what's our acquisition cost? And how long does it take for us to actually get back these customers, get back this acquisition cost? Like these are the few basic things that all investors will look for, especially institutional investors. So at that point, when we're going from angel investors to institutional investors, it's very important that we talk about these things. And talking about business through these numbers becomes very, very important. Now, after we have an institutional investor, then the next milestone is to get growth stage investors. And for that, of course, the first few points are important, but at that point, it becomes having evidence that we are scaling, making sure these metrics are actually in place properly. So the sooner we start tracking these, the better we'll understand our business, and not just from a broader ideas point of view, but also from a real metrics point of view. So I think that was a very important learning. We're still learning, still learning to get better at this, but those are a few things that basically helped us to make sure that we're reaching to the right investors. And even after all these, I would still say like serendipity plays a big role. So we need to make sure we are setting ourselves for success, so that when the good luck hits us, we are basically able to go through with success.
Afeef, you just laid out such a useful playbook for many new and budding entrepreneurs to use as they go on this journey of fundraising. And coming to fundraising is also a thing of immense responsibility, because once you raise money and you've got investors on board, you have to deliver and fulfill that vision. And while you as a founder are constantly working on providing all the support to your team and keeping them energized, I wonder what kind of support system do you have for yourself? I have, of course, been witness to your growth as a leader, as an innovator, as a manager over the past 3, 4 years that I've seen you. But it could be very lonely and challenging at times to be a startup founder, right?
Yeah, I mean, every day there are thousands of reasons for a startup not to exist, but we still do, right? Which basically means that there are so many things that are actually going wrong. It's very important to have a very solid support team at that point. So we were lucky to be part of the first cohort of Surge, which is a program by Sequoia Capital. And the the group of founders we have are basically very, so we're very tight with each other, right? So be it thick or thin, good or bad, we always reach out to each other. We share the good things, the bad things. There's so many things that you can't always talk with investors, even with your own founders, right? So having this group of external founders and having a very tight community has really helped us all. So this community, hopefully, we are all building the largest companies for the decade, but we all have each other's back.
That's amazing. So you're kind of saying you this is kind of a peer network that you've created of people who are almost in the same boat as you are in, and therefore there can be very open conversations that you could have with this peer group rather than with anybody from your own team or even with your board or your investors. This is kind of a peer group that you can be completely candid with.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm sure, as you rightly said, there are many, many challenges and occasions that you would be feeling kind of completely down and about. And I think the biggest test of your leadership skills were during the most recent times. COVID has been an unprecedented shock for the entire world, and no one was prepared for it. To deal with the health anxiety and the economic downturn all at once can be quite challenging. But you did not just seize control of the situation, but actually came out much stronger out of this crisis. I mean, ShopUp sales have gone up 6 times since April, and you've now become the number one logistics player in Bangladesh, doing 13 times more deliveries since April. Uh, how did that whole phase play out for you? I mean, it wasn't easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was really, really tough, as it was for many companies all over the world. So, if I go back to February, like around that time, that the virus was still not spreading in Bangladesh. So, the overall sentiment in Bangladesh was either the COVID will not hit Bangladesh, or even if it does, the lockdowns won't happen. But we're getting these signals from my peer group that all the in the other countries lockdown is happening, and it's just a matter of time when it basically hits Bangladesh, right? So we decided that we will take an early call. So we'll be prepared. If it doesn't happen, then all well and good. We can go back to our previous momentum. But if it does, we'll be prepared. So we took two very important early decisions, and that gave us an important, crucial 2 to 3 weeks time and to prepare. And that basically laid out the groundwork for whatever we have done during the lockdown phase and the post-lockdown phase. So the two things I mentioned, like the first one was we realized that COVID is a health issue, right? So we have many people on the ground, on the front line, reaching to deliver products to customers on behalf of our merchants, getting products from the suppliers. So we decided that their health and safety was the first and most important thing that we need to take care. So we got everyone health insurance, like throughout the entire team. Second, we got two full-time doctors. They were accessible throughout the day, 24/7, for anyone to actually ask any question. They also constantly trained the frontline heroes that we had on the ground. Then we got a feedback from the team that they were more worried about their families. Like if they got affected, they can't go back to their families, right? So we created a separate isolation center that if someone unfortunately gets affected, they can actually go there and be in isolation instead of going back to their families. So we also like prepared a two people team, like full-time team, and they executed the framework that we have decided for the COVID response. So these things basically made sure that the employee, all the colleagues that we have, they understand the priority for the company is to make sure the health safety is in the first place. The second decision we took and we basically talked about this internally extensively is once the lockdown happens, the community that will get hit the hardest will be the small business community. And a lot of small
Yeah.
businesses are dependent for their critical income on our platform. And it was very important for us to make sure that our platform is running during the difficult time. So we took a lot of strict decision at that point. We focused on a few categories. We decided to invest in a few things, and that actually helped us make sure that we're running the operation throughout the entire crisis. And what you mentioned about the momentum, I think it's the growth is basically a function of the fact that we have stuck through with our merchants during difficult times, and that helped us gain their trust. And they basically stuck with us from that point on onwards, and we are still seeing that they are actually trusting more and more over time.
This is so important what you're saying, creating that circle of trust, being there for your merchants when they were in the highest need for support, and then they in turn are now fueling your growth. And one of the big reasons for your growth that I see is this rapid shift towards digitalization by small businesses, by small merchants. One of the communities which used to be very resistant to adopting digital tools, the Modi Dukans in Bangladesh, for example. And most of them are now so willing to move to digital ordering, cashless payments. And as this trend continues in this new normal that we are now seeing in this post-COVID environment, how do you find ShopUp poised to tap into the next phase of growth? Where do you see ShopUp in a couple of years?
Yeah, I think I saw this tweet that there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks when entire decades happen. So I think we are all witnessing
So
that
true.
right now, like throughout the world. So we are seeing the same thing in Bangladesh as well. Like the group of small businesses we work with, and again, like these are neighborhood roadside shops, and 98% of our country's retail actually happens through them. So almost entirety of the country's retail is happening through them. So it's very important for them to actually make sure that they are setting up for success for the future. But this particular group was always resistant to adoption of technology. But we're seeing things happening that no one ever thought would happen. For example, the number of weekly transacting merchants on our platform has grown around 7 times since April, which basically means these people are adopting these means more and more as we basically move forward. Going forward, we believe that we can play an even more critical role in making sure these people are having access to technology. There are around close to 5 million retailers in Bangladesh. Our goal is to make sure within the next 2 years, we have at least 2 million of them actively transacting on our platform. And for that to happen, there are a few infrastructure level things that needs to happen. For example, digital payment is one of them. So we are working with multiple partners. We're extending that going forward as well to make sure we can actually fuel that. These people need access to capital. They cannot remain invisible to the formal financial institutions, because they are the ones who are driving the entire retail of Bangladesh. So we are also working on that front with multiple partners to make sure the entire ecosystem can come together to make sure these people are the ones driving the growth story of Bangladesh.
That's a very inspiring goal to have, and I can see that you're already on the path towards it. Thank you so much, Afeef, for joining us today and your candid insights on the journey that you've had as an entrepreneur. We have learned today how you identified this vast but hugely underserved segment of small businesses in Bangladesh, understood their obstacles to growth, and used the power of technology and smart design to make life easier for them. I think the big takeaway from your business model is to contextualize your solution according to the needs of your customers instead of expecting them to change. We also heard from you how founders can benefit from the right stakeholders in the journey. It's very important to have the right set of people around you: investors, key employees, business partners who share your vision and can contribute to it. It's exciting to see how ShopUp is so well placed to ride the growth story of Bangladesh and improve the livelihoods of its merchants. Thank you to our viewers. I'm Smita Aggarwal, and this is Flourish Thought Leaders Spotlight. Do join us again.